but it's all this other stuff too. And I thought about the looking good, and like I can tell you, like some of the most important days for me were those days when it was, for whatever reason, it wasn't working, and it's in my head. But in those moments, I'm rolling around the track like a spode, but I keep going, and it's, I mean, one of the things, and I can't even remember if I was coming back from injury or something, but I remember when we used to have the old step, or it wasn't a step down, but that table down thing along the fence.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
it was only, if it was 20 feet, I'd be surprised to get to the table. And I couldn't jump that. Like, it was embarrassing,
Sure.
but I just kept making laps. And it's like, and I think that to go, well, it's easy to say, but in my head, in everybody's head, you look, let's just say it, you look stupid. Especially you don't look the way you think you should,
Right.
because you're not doing what you're able to do.
Right.
But you have to take your mind off of that and just go, well, I want to ride dirt bikes, and I know that to get where I want to be, this is one of the things I think people don't quite get, is you just have to make laps. You have to make slow laps to make slightly faster laps to make slightly faster laps, and eventually you'll be back where you're going to be.
Yep.
And I think that ties into a lot of the stuff you were saying, but
Absolutely.
Well, do you think, Aaron, like, I know when I was younger and I'd go to the track, and if my buddies were jumping something, I had to jump it because I didn't want to, be the odd man out, and I'd do it. But as I've gotten older, it's like, I don't care. I don't want to jump it. I don't jump it. You know what I mean? It's like you don't feel compelled anymore to do just because someone else is doing it. I ride way more into my comfort zone now than I ever have.
so I would say, I think that's, I mean, if that's your experience, I think that's completely accurate, and it probably represents a lot of people. But I feel like I never really felt that. I mean, I see that, I feel it, but in the moment I always saw it, and I'm like, I'm not here to, well, it kind of gets back to Brett's first point. I'm not here to do what that guy's doing. I'm here to do this much more than what I did last time.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But I know my buddies before there'd be a big jump, and my one buddy was really fast, and he'd say, I'll tell you, and you can figure out the pace, and then I'd clear it, I'd be fine. But now I don't even, I go out, I ride within my level, and I put, like you said, I push myself to try to do a little bit better. And, at this level, you see the gains you make. I mean, it could be something teeny tiny, and you're like, yeah, I did that this time. But I don't let people push me into uncomfortable situations like I did when I was younger.
Yeah, but I also think it's important that people don't push you into that. Like, I would say this, I guess what I'm saying is I never let anybody ever push me into a situation where I was uncomfortable, because I always felt this is about me and my experience, and I want to beat everybody around me, but I'm going to do it my way. And I also knew, I guess, and maybe this is like moto psychology that was out there heavy in the 80s, or, you listen to a Jeff Ward or a Ricky Johnson, like, it was, you get good, you don't worry about the jumps. If you get the corners figured out, the jumps are easy. Like, just keep working on the corner to the point. And I never did, ever in my life did this deal where I pull off the track and try a jump, other than when we were just actually trying to figure out the geometry of a jump. But like, if there was a good jump on a track, I would never pull off and ride out of the corner so I could do the jump, because it's like, what's the point? I'm going to get to the point where I'm good enough in the corner to where not making the jump is a problem.
True.
And so I think philosophically that's just it, is it's like I never let that push me. And so you can talk about injury, like, oh, so then you don't get injured, so you last longer. But the other thing is it's more fun. If I'm out there doing things that I don't feel comfortable doing, why am I going to come back?
Right.
And then the other thing is, like, good moto buddies wouldn't do that to you. And I think of like Brady Hanna, who to me is a savant. Like, that kid was so much faster than he ever should have been. but I also think he was getting all the right information at all the right times. And I always told him, like, do not ever push yourself to jump anything. Like, always, because the jumps are where you're going to get hurt and it distracts you. Stay focused on your corners. But like, he would want to jump some, and I'd be coaching, and I'm like, no, don't, not today. Like, just put that down the road a couple weeks or whatever till it's to the point where that jump is so annoying, not jumping it, that the first time you jump it, you're just on it. But the other thing I did for Brady, and I think more than anything, and you probably see this and you know this, is it's like, if I go to the track and I'm worried about a jump, I'm not going to have any fun that day. Whereas if I just say, I'm not going to do these jumps today, I'm going to ride my laps, we'll get those jumps next time, I can have a good time. And, well, now I'm ranting, but we were in Norfolk last week, and on my second lap, I did all the jumps. And then, and I did them on my third lap. And then I'm just like, you know, like, I'm not hitting these perfect. So there was like 3 jumps. I'm just like, I'm not going to jump those today. So then it allowed me to have a good time, work on everything else, and just put those out of my head. And I'm not saying it's the right thing, but I think, like, this speaks to, like, some of what Brett's saying there is, like, you know, do you want to have a good, how long you want to do this, and how do you want to do this to get better for yourself, which is why I do it, you know.
And I think it comes down to that, building that moto maturity, you know, and having the right frame of mind where nobody pushes you to do anything that you're not ready for. And at the same time, you don't ever let there be a fear that builds up and then it holds you back, you know. So you use it as that metaphor for life. So, and there's that balance there. So whenever you finally start hitting those, whatever that jump is that you're talking about, let's say whatever the big jump is, when you finally get it, you put in the time, you're so prepared that the first time you do it, it's just like, oh wow, that felt so good, and I want to keep doing that, because you just nail it. Maybe you don't hit it just right, but you land it, and it's like, oh man, I thought I had to go way harder than I did. But you're so prepared when you finally do it that, you know, it wasn't done by, oh, I'm just going to pull the trigger and see what happens. No, it was done by all this time preparing and building your skills to where you did it, that it all just comes together. And at the same time, there's that thing where you maybe have done a jump 100 times and you're off that season, or, you know, you go off the winter, you come back and there's that jump and you've done it before. But if that thing creeps into you to where, oh man, I don't know if I can do this or not, or I'm scared of it, being wise enough and having the ability to work your way up to where you feel good, and then, you know, you don't let that fear overtake you, so that you get to where you ride tense, you know, because you were just saying, I think you were saying this, you know, if you got the bad attitude going or whatever, and then it ends up showing, I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, but this is kind of the way I was taking it, ends up showing in your writing, and it ends up compounding in your writing, because you're either writing timid or writing tense or writing with a bad attitude, and just getting past that thing and not letting that fear grow into something as well. So,
well, you think of motocross, though, I mean, just riding a dirt bike is fun. I mean, it should put a smile on your face. There should never be a day when you get on your bike and you're like, ugh, you know? I mean, maybe as a pro where they're putting in all the hours and laps and stuff, but at our level, every time we get on a bike, we ought to have a smile ear to ear, you know?
Yep. Amen.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to another thing that I kind of thought about this week. You're just reminding me of it a little bit. Having fun, you know, and I think about how many parents work so hard for their kids to have a great motocross career, you know, sacrifice so many things. And I think all of us as parents that have done that for our kids in any sport, and, you know, I'm going to relate it to motocross for me, for example, that, you know, you want to give them the best bikes, you want to give them the best opportunities to ride, the best equipment, take them as many places as you can. You know, and I think we had a way more healthy motocross environment a few years ago, because people didn't mind if they showed up in their pickup, and they didn't mind if they raced the local races. And then maybe you'd go race a few travel races. And then we got to the point where I remember hearing this where I just didn't care. I was like, well, we went down to Brush. We went to Brush because Brush, Colorado became this big thing where everybody wanted to go there. And it's an awesome track. But that's all you heard, and that's what everybody was talking about, to show, at least I've done it. I've been to Brush, and then after that we started seeing who had the biggest camper, who had the, newest pickup. It became biggest, bestest, mostest. And, I think we've gotten this unhealthy culture in motocross and what it's about. And I think it's been hard on the family and the kids. And then some of the kids that don't motocross, they end up, I'm not saying this happens with Deegan, but they end up being like Deegan's brother, where they're the one that's hanging out with everybody, but they don't ride. You know what I mean? They kind of get they're the kid that gets kind of brushed aside sometimes. And I've seen so many things like that hopefully we can see some of that change in our motorcycle world.
And I think you see that in a lot of sports, like people just kind of go too overboard, and the kids don't know any better. Like, they're not going to correct it.
Right.
The parents have to steer that ship. And it's kind of sad, or I don't know, it's not sad, but I think there's this opportunity that's still there for that more simpler approach to moto or trail riding, where it's just like, oh, well, on a nice weekend coming up, and I kind of still got this, I'll start getting texts from Spencer and David, and when I was in the hills from you guys, and it's just like, hey, let's meet at the track and just ride, or should we go to Farmingdale or whatever. And it does, like, to me, that still exists, and I go to 10 different places, more or less. In fact, I'm hoping to go visit Landon in a few weeks here in Colorado, but it's not this whole undertaking where the motorhome and you show up, and it can be spur of the moment, back of a pickup or whatever, and not it's just that people who haven't experienced that moto in that way are kind of missing out, I think.
I do too, and I think that's honestly why we see so many people passing through the sport. Because in my mind right now, I could think of, over the last 10 years, since what I would call our SDMA heydays, I can think of so many kids that were fast, and they're gone. I mean, they don't ride anymore, or if they ride, it might be here and there a little bit in the woods. A lot of them don't even have bikes. And it was that push thing that was like so serious that I think that, motocross wasn't fun. It was fun for the, pure intensity of it and the adrenaline thing. But when they look back at a lot of that, it's like, it really wasn't that fun.
Right.
And, then the things that have happened with families, divorces, different things, because people spent so much, went so hard, had the wrong focus, that they kind of passed through our sport. And, what we really want to see is people come in and be lifetimers, be lifers.
Right.
And part of that, I think, is having the most healthy mentality. And believe me, I mean, I've been a high-level athlete in many sports. I love competition. My kids have been high-level athletes, and I've been one of those people that push too hard at different times myself. But I do know this, so I'm not just, preaching here. I do know this. Part of a healthy sports mentality is being able to place that sport where it's at. Not everybody is going to be a pro.
Right.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have those dreams, because I want everybody to have big dreams and go for them. But also you need to put it into perspective in terms of what you can attain and what's the most healthy way you can do that and attain that, rather than doing just what everybody else is doing. And I think maybe if you look at Eli, that's a perfect example. He had a completely different upbringing in motocross than what we see with the rest of the pack.
Right. Yeah, I heard a data point the other day that of the kids and futures, that their parents have $500,000 to $1 million invested, and they're 16 years old. Now that's obviously that whatever, great, but that's not the best path for everybody. And yet there, to me, like, we can wax about the old days, how great things were, but the funny thing for me, like, it hasn't changed that much. I think moto can be more or less the same today as it was in '79, or which it was very different, it just was, but it can be the same if you choose that.
So what do you think the percentage is of people that reach the top level?
I saw that percentage once. It's actually out there. I don't remember what it was, but I'm going to say
1 or 2% reach that?
Yeah, maybe
if that
1% of motocross people.
So that means the other 99% will never get there. So it all comes down to, you got to have fun doing it. Some of the best times I ever had on a bike was me and my buddies getting off work, and we load up our bikes and we run over to the track, and we're sitting over there yucking it up and bench racing and all that stuff. And that's what I look forward to. And another time I was just sitting there when you guys were talking about that. My very first bike was a Honda Mini Trail 50 when I was a little kid. And, I grew up, we didn't have hardly any money. And so I mowed yards all summer to pay for it. And I think I still only had to pay like $100 for it or something. And, but in my parents' backyard, I had basically a flat track. And I would flat track that thing around, round and round and round and round. And like you said, I didn't care. I loved it after it. This is down in Florida, of course. We get rain every afternoon. And I'd go out there and do it in the mud and have a great time and just a blast. And I look back on that, and I can just reminiscing about it. I can still get that excited feeling of what it was like to go up and crank up that little 50 and just go round and round and round. Looking at it now, kids would probably be like, well, where were the jumps? Where were the berms? No, I was just me, man. I was out there having a great time. And that's what motorcycles, that's why I've had this love affair with motorcycles my whole life. I was in a stressful career for, many years. And motorcycles, that was the one thing that I knew I could just leave everything behind, go out there and just get in this happy spot. And it's been like that forever with motorcycles. And that's what I would like to see everybody get. Chances are you're not going to be the next Ricky Carmichael. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Right.
But don't get so caught up in that to where when you and your buddies are just out having a good time, savor that moment, because that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Well.
Yeah, and it's I mean, and it's interesting because you look at it like from, whatever, pick a year, 78, 85, there was probably 100 times more people racing motorcycles at that time than there is today. There was races everywhere and all across the state, and the gates were full, and there was not near as many classes, but there was just a lot of riders. And there was there were pros, but I'd say there's more pros today, so the likelihood has actually gone up, but it's still ridiculously unlikely. But it's that whole experience is still available, but people just don't see it. Why not just, although, you just still see people that are doing it, but it's surprising. But no, I think it's funny because I look around and it's like, I think there's more people like from the 80s that are still riding today than what there are from 2000 and 2010s. Like, they came in last.
Right. So
because they weren't enjoying it in the way that you did, Chip. They never ever experienced that. Just like, I'm just having a good time.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of that though is, when I was a kid, and I keep saying, growing up in Florida, because I've only lived here for just a few years, so that's what I have to go by. But in Florida, when I was growing up, there was, right off your, you just rode to the end of your street, and there'd be like trails all over the place. And I know just in the town I lived in, there was at least 2 or 3 motocross tracks, but and there was more places to ride. I think that was the reason why more people were into it. But when I left Florida, you couldn't find a patch of woods to ride in. And the only place you could ride would be on a track. And like the closest track to me was an hour away over in Orlando. So you'd have to go over there. And I think that cut into a lot of the numbers, you know, because people couldn't just go buy a whatever dirt bike and just hit the woods and go have fun. And then if they were pretty good, they'd go over to a track. You know, it seems like in Florida, it forced you to have to go to a track if you wanted to ride a dirt bike. And that's what's so awesome about here is, you know, I've been riding my trail bike. You know, we've had a pretty mild winter this year, so I've been riding my trail bike on and off, you know, throughout the winter.
Sure.
And that's a great, I mean, I'll be by myself. I'll go out, roll it out of the shop, and just go. It's not like I have to do all this prep and, you know, load my bike and you know, make sure I got, you know, extra filters and extra all that. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I think that's kind of hurt the numbers game, is there's not as many places to ride.
Well, and it is, certainly that would play a part, but and I also, you know, one of the things is just the dynamic is changed, like, and it is a family, I mean, I don't know exactly how to take this, but we hear, oh, it's a family sport, and it is.
It is.
But honestly, it didn't used to be. Like, when I started, like, my parents have never seen me race or even ride. I just bought dirt bike. You know, my uncle rode, that's how I got into it, but he didn't go to the races with me. In fact, he would actively try to stop me from going to the races. But I bought my own dirt bike, and, you know, a lot like you, Chip, I just made the money. And then when I actually was started to race, I bought a van when I was 13. I didn't even have a driver's license, but, you know, still bought the van and put the bike in it, went riding. And then when I was 14, I was I was an assembler in the factory during the summer. And then me and my brother both were, and we were both working in an Elks Club at night just to get enough money to do all this stuff. And then when I go to the track, like, it wasn't a bunch of parents. And I'm not saying that's bad, but I think it was just so much more organic.
Mm-hmm.
It was. There's not a lot of dudes, like, even 18-year-olds that are out buying bikes and just making it happen. And I mean, what guy on the track do we have today that's under 40 that didn't have their parents get them into it? And I'm not saying that's bad, but it's just kind of different. Like, I think about your what you were just saying there, Chip, and I'm like, God, that kind of represents me, and that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But that drive came from a different place. So, and I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, well, our heroes, I guess, were different. Maybe that's it, you know? I mean, you think about it, it's like...
But, you know, our heroes, though, I mean, back when I was a kid, it wasn't like it is now, where you just, you know, turn on your phone and you can watch a race, or you can keep up with them real time. We had to wait for the magazine to come out every month to see who even won a race. Right. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but... I don't, you know, I know you guys are from, you know, a more rural area out here, and you might have a different take on it, but that's, in Florida, you know, that's, when it was rural, it was, like Aaron said, it was more organic, but now it's like, you buy a dirt bike, you got to go to a track to ride it. You know, there's no learning on the trails or, you know, on your, you know, on property or somewhere. You get it and you go, you know, if you're a kid, you go to the kiddie track and you get in everybody's way till you get decent enough to get on the big track, and you get in everybody's way until you get decent enough to be passing everybody, you know? So it's a little different now. It would be almost like when growing up as a kid playing football in, you know, the front yard of your house with a bunch of kids from the neighborhood, as opposed to saying, okay, we got to go buy you some pads and a helmet and everything, and we signed you up for a league. You're going to go out and play football, you know, and you've never even thrown a football at that point. So I think that is what Aaron was talking about, it being so, you know, used to be more organic.
Yeah, true. Yeah. No arguments there. That's for sure.
But that's still, but it's still, I mean, to your point, Brett, I think is that we could still make it, you know, there's that opportunity to simplify it, however we do it as a community or whatever, to make it, to try to get that longevity in there, and, you know, give this experience that we have as coming up on, you know, our age, whatever we're at, what's up there, where we're still loving it, you know.
Right. And that's really my goal, and really I guess where I was going with that whole thought is there's those corrections that need to be made, and when we see them, I think we need to do what we can to correct them, and we may or may not be right what we think, but I think we're definitely onto something there, and there's some of those things that have killed the sport. There's just no question about it. Granted, everything's got more expensive. Yeah, there's less places to ride. I don't think, you know, there's maybe as many parents that ride as there. This is just an observation I have. Like with me, when I grew up, all my friends' dads rode something. They might be some funny old like KE 100 Kawasaki or something, but they rode something, you know. And I think we've seen a lot of new people come into the sport that never rode before, and so, and that's a good thing. I mean, after COVID, we kept seeing all kinds of new faces, and people are just like, they're just looking around like, well, what do we do? What do we do? And so, you know, ultimately, I think we need to take their hand and show them the best way that we know how, and then take some of those things that we just kind of discussed in mind, try to give them the right perspective. So that's how we change that culture is, you know, make it easy on yourself. Don't make this a burden on your family to where it's a burden for you and your wife, or you and your other children, or your other family dreams. Maybe you don't get that house, or you don't get that property, or you don't start that business, or whatever it is, or you don't do that other career because you focus so much on this sport, trying to get little Johnny to Loretta's and then on to whatever else to try to get him to be a pro before their time. You know, all those things will come, and I think we're in a time where there's enough knowledge out there in the general motocross world that you don't necessarily have to go the Loretta's route and all that kind of thing like it was. I think that we're in a new dawn of time, and I think that that's kind of why I referenced Eli. You know, he did things a little bit different than the rest of the pack, and look where he's at. He does have a different frame of mind, and you look at Eli's stats, can't be argued with. There's a guy that's gone through adversity, gone through everything, and has the second best record that there is.
Right.
You know,
the one thing about Eli, though, look at his parents. His dad, they said, was the Ricky Carmichael of mountain biking, and his mom was like some professional downhill skier or something like that. So his was, I'm sure I'm sure it was like in his genes to be that good. You know, he still has to put in the time, still has the talent, but if you have two high level performing parents, chances are they're going to have a pretty high level performing kid. But I think what you're talking about, I think it's, you know, we had discussed it before, was as a club, if we see this middle-aged guy that shows up on a bike and he looks really, you know, timid, like he hadn't been on one since he was 18 years old, we as a club, I think, need to take that guy aside and say, hey, come on over here, let's just come follow me around this field over here by the, you know, where the hill climb is or something, and just kind of get them, you know, up to speed before you just throw them on the track. You know, and then maybe just shadow them while they're on the track, so they don't feel like, you know, everybody's just blowing by them and they're in everybody's way. So then, you know, hey, I'm with you, man. You know, they can go around us. We'll just stay over to the edge of the track as they come by. You know, I think as a club, that should be something we should focus on.
I totally agree with that. And just jumping back to the thing about Eli, he definitely had the genes, but what better than to have those two people speak into his life? And motocross
100%.
is more mental than anything, and that's what I guess I'm getting at. I think the mental thing and the game plan thing is the biggest thing. No matter how fast you are, that's the thing as a vet in the sport that you can give if you have the right perspective to those people coming up. So that person that you're talking about, if you can set them straight, on the right path from the get go, to where no, you don't need to buy a brand new dirt bike every year. You don't need to get into that debt problem. You don't need to have all those issues. This sport is expensive, but it doesn't have to be an expense that you can't sustain. And help them get to that sustainability thing. That's what I want to see.
I agree. And what you? Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry.
Go ahead, buddy.
I was just going to say the thing that parenting is hard. And I think like I've listened to John Tomac talk enough to know that he tries really hard at it and he does things his own way. And I think maybe partly because he had the confidence going in, like, hey, I was a pro bicycle cross country racer. I kind of know what it takes to be an athlete. I kind of know a little bit about dirt biking. But I know I'm going to do it my way. And that's something we always hear about him. And I do think that, like, parenting's hard and every kid is different and you have to pay attention to your kid. And I'm saying this, like, I got 2 kids and nothing ever goes quite, you never have total control. But you can't stop evaluating. And what I see with so many young moto parents is they're like, I don't ride dirt bikes, so I'm going to do whatever I read about in this magazine. And it's like, dude, no, you have to pay attention to your kid. Just be a good parent, give them a healthy mental approach. And then, yeah, you can listen to people, but you have to do it yourself. And I would say, in general, across the board, they all spend too much money. If they all spent half as much money, to the point where now it's a problem, then they could start making decisions there. But if there's money to be spent, they spend it. Right. And I have one kind of cool example. This guy come out, and he's a super good dude. But he came out, he came to the hills, and I knew him for other reasons. His kid had gotten into moto, and I'd never saw him. They're from Sioux Falls, but they knew me from there, from people I knew, and they asked, like, hey, could you coach our daughter a little bit in moto? And I'm like, yeah, just meet me at the track. And it was kind of a weird deal, like, go through some of the normal stuff, and Brady was there. And this girl and Brady were about the same age and kind of hit it off. And so they were riding together and farting around and screwing around, and he got pissed. And he's like, you're not here to make a boyfriend. I'm like, dude, like, that is the best thing that could have happened. Well, I let her ride off, and I'm like, that is the best possible thing that could have happened to her. Like, you got a kid who's really, really good, who she likes, and they're having fun. That's as good as it gets. There's nothing I can tell you that's going to give her more than what she's doing right now, making her sport more fun.
Right.
He didn't buy that. She was out of the sport within a couple years after.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm just like, I mean, to me, it's a perfect example. Like, if it was my kid, I'm like, my kid's having fun.
Yeah.
That's what I really, really want. I don't care if they win a race or whatever. I just want them to be a good, healthy kid. I personally believe, and I think Brett crystallizes the thoughts better than anybody that I've met, that it's an amazing way to help raise a kid.
It is.
Like, you got to approach it like that.
Right.
But you know what you're saying too. I don't know if you guys caught that on last weekend's race. You know that one guy. I think his name's Lux Turner.
Yeah.
You know, he's been doing better and better each and every race, it seems like. And I heard him say that he grew up riding dirt bikes, and then there was a point from like 16 to 18 he didn't ride at all.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I might have missed it, but he didn't ride at all. So he just started riding just a few years ago again. And they said that sometimes that works out good because he's not burned out by the time he gets to the pro level. and he's only getting better. So, I mean, that goes with any sport. I know, like with my daughter, she was a really good soccer player. And man, down in Florida, if your kid, had any aspirations to play in college and stuff, she had a private trainer by the time she was 8. And then we were traveling all over the country, her playing soccer from the time she was probably 10. And she told me, she ended up playing in college, but she told me, she goes, Dad, I was already burned out in soccer by my junior year of high school. She goes, I really didn't enjoy it. I did it because it was kind of something I'd always done and I was good at it. And she only lasted a year in college and she quit. She was like, no, done. And that's because it wasn't fun. She lost the fun. She had all the talent, but that was it. She was burned out, done. So looking back, I wish I would have just let her play locally in, different leagues and have fun, but it's kind of a balance